I'm Vice Chair of the Gettysburg Foundation. I'm also one of the commissioners for the America 250 PA celebration, which is what we're arguably kicking off here this evening in Gettysburg. On behalf of America 250 PA, the Gettysburg Foundation, and the Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, who have been phenomenal partners for our organization, we thank them for joining us this evening. We're honored to welcome you to this very special, what's called Two Lights for Tomorrow event here in historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The 250, which many of you may not be aware of, is the semi-quincentennial of the United States. Just kind of rolls off your tongue, doesn't it? The semi-quincentennial. We'll have a tutorial afterwards so you can all catch that. It's an opportunity, which technically the 250th is 2026. We gather here not only to reflect on our shared history, but to ignite a spirit of unity, resilience, and hope for generations to come. The 250 actually honors our heritage, which is both inspirational and aspirational. That is, recognizes the ideals upon which this country is founded, and also recognizes that we can continue to get better and pushes all of us to become better citizens. The two lights we celebrate today represent both remembrance and renewal, honoring the legacy of those who came before us and shining a light toward a future shaped by innovation, inclusion, and the enduring American spirit. There is perhaps no more fitting place in Gettysburg to hold this event, a symbol of sacrifice, courage, and a turning point in our nation's journey. As President Lincoln reminded us not far from where we stand today over in that direction, it is our responsibility to ensure that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And in fact, tonight we're going to be talking about what arguably is the first shot of the American Revolution. That's part of why we're here this evening, to commemorate that. And as we stand here, I'm reminded, of course, that the first shot of the Battle of Gettysburg is just out of view, just about a short 2-mile ride out Route 30. If you've not been there, I encourage that. That's the first shot of the largest land battle ever held on the American continent. And so we stand here looking at both of those first shot events and remembering both of those as well. Today's gathering is part of a growing movement across Pennsylvania and the nation to engage citizens of all ages in the story of America, past, present, and future. Through community conversations, artistic expression, and educational initiatives, America 250 PA aims to create a lasting legacy that reflects the diversity and dynamism of this great commonwealth in our country. On the commission, we use the term EPIC, which is educate, preserve, innovate, and celebrate. And part of that epic is why we're here this evening, and it resonates throughout all of that. Thank you for being here, for being part of this journey, and for helping us keep these two lights burning brightly. So celebrate where we've been and, more importantly, where we're going, as I mentioned earlier, both inspirational and aspirational as we move forward. It's my pleasure now to bring up Judy Morley, who is the head of the wonderful museum here, along with, or Jackie, are you coming up at the same time, or two different, I'm sorry, okay. Judy, come on up.
Thank you, Gene. Well, I just want to say a quick welcome here to Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. We are thrilled to partner with the Gettysburg Foundation. We are so grateful to the foundation for including us in this event and choosing to have it here. So welcome. For those of you who have never been here before, we invite you to come back and see the museum. For those of you that are regulars, welcome back. And we are just so, and thank you to the weather gods that be for tonight. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Judy, and it's our pleasure to also bring up Jackie Spainhour. Jackie's the new president of the Gettysburg Foundation and a new resident of your community here in Gettysburg. Jackie?
Good evening. I'm also here just to give some welcome remarks as well. I first want to thank Judy. Thank you so much for your partnership. This means a lot to us to be able to get out into the community and to be here in this beautiful space that means so much to so many. If you're not familiar with the Gettysburg Foundation, we're the philanthropic partner of the National Park Service. So we support fundraising to allow the Park Service to do what they do best on the battlefield. We also own and operate that's downtown. We also own the train station that Lincoln came on as well, and the Spangler Farm and Field Hospital that you can also come and visit. So I encourage you, if you haven't been to any of those places, or if you would like more information, I will be here. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope that you find tonight just as memorable and meaningful as it is going to be for Judy and I. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. It's now my pleasure to introduce two members of the soon-to-be famous Eisenberg family. First is Britt, who is the Director of Leadership at the Gettysburg Foundation, and his daughter Una, who are going to read Paul Revere's Ride, a famous poem many of us are familiar with, written in 1860 by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Interestingly, his son was a member of the 1st Massachusetts Cavalry who fought here, but unfortunately, Longfellow's son was not here as he was ill. So Britt and Una, please come up.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive. Who remembers the famous day in you?
He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. Then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore. Just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset, British man-o'-war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar, the cross moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend, through alley and street, wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed the tower of the Old North Church by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade by the trembling ladders steep and tall to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of the town and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath in the churchyard lay the dead in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still that he could hear like a sentinel's tread the watchful night wind as it went creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead. For suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed at the landscape far and near, then impetuous stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth. But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the Old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still, and lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hoofs in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing, a spark. Struck out by a steed, flying fearless and fleet, that was all. And yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night. And the spark struck out by the steed in his flight, kindled the land into flame with its heat. He has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him, tranquil and broad and deep, is the mystic, meeting the ocean tides. And under the alders that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with a spectral glare, as if they stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon. It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the bleating of the flock and the twitter of birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And one was safe and asleep in his bed, who at the bridge would be the first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest, in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball, from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again, under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For borne on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last,
In the hour of darkness, in peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of the steed, and the midnight message of Paul.
Another round of applause for Britt
And Una for their work this evening. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Cody Ace, who's Director of Education and Interpretation at the Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. You want to tell us a little bit more about that historic night 250 years ago today. Cody.
Thank you, Gene, and thank you all for being here. What I would like to do over the next several minutes is not only talk about what happened on this night 250 years ago, but also tie in a little bit of context for why here at Gettysburg is an important place for us to remember this story as well. I, Paul Revere of Boston, in the colony of the Massachusetts Bay, in New England, of lawful age doth testify and say that I was in Boston on the evening of the 18th of April, 1775. That is how the 41-year-old silversmith opened his deposition, made at the request of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress just 6 days after his ride 250 years ago tonight. It was the first of 3 eyewitness accounts that Revere penned about his fateful role in the hours before the Revolutionary War began, the other 2 coming in the form of a second deposition soon thereafter, and a letter 23 years later in 1798 to the Massachusetts Historical Society. From debates surrounding what exactly it was Paul Revere shouted to onlookers as he made his midnight ride, to the role that other individuals who aided in the effort, who have long been forgotten, to the symbolism of the lanterns we represent here tonight. It is a moment shrouded in that ever-present combination of history and memory. As with so many tales from antiquity, and the heroic anecdotes we love to associate with nation building, there is ample myth and misunderstanding at play. But the human drama of it all makes for a profound and memorable American origin story based in what we can discern about historical truth as we commemorate a semi-quincentennial this evening and ponder what this ride and the war for independence it sparked meant to a succeeding generation of warriors who led and fought another revolution on this field 80 and more years later. As Revere remembered of that night, I was sent for by Dr. Joseph Warren about 10 o'clock that evening and desired to go to Lexington and inform Mr. Samuel Adams and the Honorable John Hancock, Esquire, that there were a number of soldiers marching to the bottom of the common. Assuming the best route to alert Adams and Hancock before they could be arrested, Revere proceeded immediately and was put across the Charles River boat and landed at Charlestown Battery, went into the town and there got a horse, Revere wrote, learning along the way of a well-mounted and armed set of British officers going toward Concord after sunset on a damp, misty day. Revere narrowly avoided capture, at one point being chased at a full gallop for about 300 yards before his pursuer stopped. I proceeded to Lexington through Mystic and awakened Mr. Adams and Hancock and delivered my message, Revere recalled. After I had been there about half an hour, at 12:30 in the morning, under a nearly full moon on April 19th, another rider approached the scene, William Dawes, a tanner and militiaman, who rode an equally important route as Revere, over a greater distance. The pair's luck ran out, though, when, alongside a third patriot, Dr. Samuel Prescott, they faced capture by a British patrol. Dawes and Prescott soon escaped, and Revere was free to leave after some questioning. Revere, Dawes, and their oft-overlooked associates were but a handful of men from at least 7 associations comprising more than 250 individuals who had a direct hand in leading Boston's revolutionary movement, the most famous among them, the Sons of Liberty. But what about the iconic symbols that we honor now? In a colonial land then comprising more than 3,000 churches representing 18 denominations, none was more important on this April night than Old North in Boston, Pulitzer Prize recipient Rick Atkinson has detailed. He said, crowned by a towering steeple that required more than 150 stairs to climb, the structure had long been used as a landmark by navigators entering the harbor. On its north face hung 2 lanterns of tinned steel with glass panels, pewter finials, and metal rings for hanging or carrying. For plain-spun Boston, the lanterns were fancy artifacts, Atkinson wrote, 14 inches high, 6 inches wide and deep, with 200 perforations in the top, arranged to throw exquisite shadows shaped as circles and twin gleams that could be seen across the harbor. It was by that signal that leaders of the Liberty movement knew that Revere and Dawes had been on the move. 1 lantern to indicate British dissension upon Lexington by land and 2 by sea. To some it proved to be superfluous, but it was undoubtedly dramatic and enduring in American iconography. For the 2 lights evoked what Atkinson has called hooves striking sparks. Rider and steed merged into a single elegant creature bound for glory. And of course, there's the matter of what it was Revere yelled as he approached Lexington. The British are coming, as the legend would have us believe, or the more likely accurate, the regulars are coming out, or the army is coming, which would have made far more sense to American colonists still living as British subjects, after all. The takeaway, another Pulitzer Prize winner, David Hackett Fisher, has told us in his expert retelling of Paul Revere's ride is this: the history of a free people is the history of hard choices. In that respect, when Paul Revere alarmed the Massachusetts countryside, he was carrying a message for us. The events of April 18th and 19th, 1775 led to the shot heard round the world and fighting at Lexington and Concord. When 1 gun was fired, Revere himself observed, I saw the smoke in the front, heard a shout, and could distinguish first irregular firing and then platoons. With that, as we now know, a revolution turned to war. War led to independence, and independence paved the way for a new republic. In the generations that passed, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War, heirs to the founding fathers and mothers embarked upon a new birth of freedom. Here at Gettysburg, in the decades following this battle, United States soldiers, statesmen, and veterans, from privates all the way to the commander-in-chief, embarked upon a rhetorical journey to connect the nation's origins to its second founding. 1 mile north of us, atop Oak Ridge, at the dedication of the 12th Massachusetts Monument, veteran George Patch invoked the language of 1775 as his inspiration for engaging in battle here in 1863. He and his comrades were planting the seeds of a great moral revolution, said Patch, destined in our day and generation to shake the Republic to its very foundation. And it was that regiment's namesake, the Webster Regiment, branded to honor the esteemed statesman Daniel Webster, who dedicated the Bunker Hill Monument back in 1825. And he declared of the mood 250 years ago now, the tidings of Lexington and Concord had no sooner spread than it was universally felt that the time had at last come for action. And he called Paul Revere a man of sense and character, of high public spirit, whom we ought never to forget. Here in Adams County, the local Civil War era congressman, Edward McPherson, for whom the ridge just west of us is named, reached back to the throes of the Revolution during a speech at Soldiers National Cemetery. It must be regarded, he said, as a supreme historic felicity that more than 80 years after the first ringing blow for human freedom, U.S. soldiers at Gettysburg struck the decisive blow in the fullness of time and in a titanic struggle for the salvation of the Constitution. At that same commemoration, Colonel William Rickards acknowledged Union veterans' preservation of the glorious heritage of freedom bequeathed us by the sires of the Revolution. Captain Thomas Merchant simply determined, to the Revolution of 75, we are indebted for the Rebellion of 61, for the latter upheld the principles of the former. Fittingly for our occasion, as we honor Two Lights for Tomorrow, it was as if some men who fought here reached through the pages of history, forward to us and backward to their revolutionary forebears. Lieutenant Eliakim Torrance exemplified this in his declaration that Lexington and Bunker Hill have sent forth a resplendent light to all lovers of liberty, but to us and our children at least, nothing can eclipse this field of glory. In that vein, Private John Galbraith noted that if it be true that the first shot fired at Lexington echoed around the world, the sound of artillery of Gettysburg has not only been heard around the world, but it will continue to echo and re-echo through the coming ages, a perpetual salute in honor of the conflict waged here, which saved the Union and rang the death knell of both slavery and treason in this goodly land of ours. But for at least two soldiers, as we will see, who fought under the American flag on this battlefield in July 1863, they not only fought for the new nation that their fathers brought forth on this continent, but very much for the concept of democracy in a constitutional republic constructed by their personal ancestors, beginning on this night 250 years ago. They were willing to shed their blood, and one paid the ultimate price, for the American ideal that these candles represent this evening. And they did so as blood-borne relations to the two men who carried forth from Boston those lanterns, those two lights for tomorrow.
Thank you, Cody. As we all know, we as Americans are linked by ideals, ideas, and a shared vision. The part I love about history is the fact that we find those threads that link generations. As Cody said, we have that here at Gettysburg from 1775 as it reaches in. And to talk about those links from 1775 to 1863, I'd like to bring back Judy Morley to talk about one of those stories. Judy?
So I'm going to begin with the least well-known of the two men, William Dawes. So William Dawes rode with Paul Revere. At the time, he was considered every bit as important. He actually personally informed more people than Paul Revere did because of Paul Revere being detained. Now, William Dawes was a fascinating man. He was a tanner, son of liberty. His son, also called William Dawes, which, try researching this on Ancestry.com. You have 3 generations of William Daweses. Luckily, someone on Ancestry.com put in parentheses, who rode, next to it. So you have William Dawes who rode, and William Dawes. So I could follow him pretty well. The younger William Dawes at some point moves to Ohio and Wisconsin, has a son named Henry. Henry marries the daughter of an incredibly important Ohio family. He marries Sarah Cutler. Sarah Cutler's grandfather had written the Northwest Ordinances. Sarah Cutler's father was the first pioneer in